Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening to North Carolina, to Florida, to wherever you might be joining in with me tonight. My name is Reverend Denise Schubert. This is Sunday Night Alive, and we are here to explore spiritual ideas and principles. We're here to explore practical spirituality. How does our connection to nature, our connection to God, our connection to spirit, how does our connection serve us in our everyday living? And what can we do to up-level our own consciousness and contribute to the consciousness of the planet, which, in my view these days, needs a lot of consciousness raising. So again, my name is Denise. If you're here with me, I'm so happy to be here. If you just take a moment and say hello to me on the chat, on the comments, I will know that you're here and not feel quite so alone. I have an anonymous Facebook user. Hello, hello. So, we come together really to try to understand fully, I'm not alone, to try to understand fully who we really are and what our role is in the universe. What is the universe and how do we participate in the universe? And I'm a firm believer that spiritual growth and development, our evolution as beings, is the only thing that will save us. The world is such a dark place right now, and it actually has my panties in a twist. I'm just appalled at how much anger. Facebook user, I don't have a name anymore. Anyway, how much frustration and anger and fear and hatred there is in the world. I'm just baffled by it. So I hope you are equally as baffled, because being baffled leaves us open to exploring how it is that we can be beings who help to make a difference, to change it. So my topic tonight is actually, I didn't know how to really word it, but it's really about practicing the principle of oneness. And oneness is the opposite of duality. It's the opposite of separateness. Dr. Ernest Holmes is a founder of my particular philosophy, faith, and way of life. And he said that the only problem anywhere is the idea of separation. And the only solution to any problem we have is unity or oneness. You can also say that in so many different ways. The only problem we have is fear. The only solution to fear is love. So we're not talking about anything new here. What we are doing and trying to do is to map it to our everyday living, because if we don't make it personal, so nothing will change until it's personal. So you and I cannot sit here and wait for the world to be different. We can't wait here and just curse the world and all the darkness and then and hope for that to actually have any lasting impact, because it will not. Why? Because there is no world without you and me. That the world is a conglomerate of billions of individualized expressions of divine energy, pinpoints of consciousness, and consciousness isn't always a positive thing. It can also be a negative thing, for not for better words for that. So some people have a consciousness of love and inclusivity, and some people have a consciousness of fear and exclusion. So we're wanting to shift consciousness, but what's true is the world is a reflection of the majority of consciousness. So we live in a country in which, January of 2023, there were 26 mass murders within the borders of the United States. I find that an appalling number. I find it appalling that I cannot turn on the news without seeing kids killing kids in schools, or people walking into McDonald's. It's like, what the frig? What is going on? So what I know is that we need more love. That's what I know. I know is that we need more love globally, which means we must need more love locally. So anyway, so that's what we're doing here tonight. I want to talk mostly about the difference between living either or versus both and. and I'll unpack that for us in a moment. But I want to do two things. One is that when I'm preaching in a church, I always tell a joke to start the service because I think that laughter loosens us, and we always pray in. So I'm going to tell you a joke, which you might have heard before if you've been around me for a while, and then I'm going to bless our time together. So I hope you settle in. So for humor, there was this little girl who asked her mother one day, "Mommy, how did the human race happen? How did people come to be?" And the mother answered, "Well, God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and thus all people everywhere were made. All started with Adam and Eve." So a couple days later, the little girl asked her father, "Daddy, how did human beings come to be? How did we get made?" And his father very confidently, the little girl's father says, "Well, darling, in the many years ago, there were apes. And as the world evolved, men and women evolved from the monkeys, from the apes." Well, the very confused little girl went back to her mother and said, Mommy, how can this be? You told me the human race was created by God, and Daddy told me the human race was created by monkeys. Well, the mother answered very calmly, "Well, dear, sweetheart, it's all very, very simple. I was telling you about my side of the family, and he was telling you about his side of the family." Cute, right? All right, so before we dive into our topic today, first of all, welcome to Sunday Night Alive. I'm very happy to be seeing you. I'm streaming live from North Fort Myers, where we are in eternal summer while the rest of you are doing other things, perhaps raining or snowing or wind blowing. But I'm happy to be here with you, always happy to be here with you. And so I'm going to take a moment to bless our time. To bless something is to call it sacred. And we don't do enough blessing in our lives. We move through our lives without realizing that it's holy. Wherever we stand, we are on holy ground. And so just join with me in a moment as we turn within to center ourselves. To center ourselves means to come out of the condition, come out of Fox News, come out of the trauma in our families or relationships, to come out of our worries and our doubts and our fears, and to simply turn within to that space and place within us that is the dwelling place of whatever God there is. It's also inside, not just external, but internal. Whatever it is, its nature is love. And love is that golden thread of connection that connects me to you, and you to everyone you know, and us to everyone we don't know. And so it is from that consciousness of inclusivity, of oneness, of being all part of the same glorious spiritual family that occupies this earth right now, along with all the animals and the insects and the trees, and that I just bless our time together. I don't choose normally to waste my time, so I am here. I got dressed, I've shown up in order to be here with you in this consciousness, as have you. And so I call it good. I know that whatever happens here, that there is a shift in consciousness, a raising, a revelation, an insight, an aha moment, oh my God, and that we leave here better than when we arrived. So I accept this for all of us together by saying, and so it is. Amen. Amen. So thanks for the levity. So the topic really tonight has to do with, so if you think about it, whenever you read about violence or whenever you read about hardship, whenever you read about people harming other people or the planet or animals or themselves, there's always this fundamental belief that whatever it is that caused it, whatever the source of that action was, they desperately believe it to be right, or at least believe it to be true. Now, they might not like it any more than you and I do, but somebody does not take a gun and walk into a school without believing that they're doing something good or they're doing something right. But the hallmark of spiritual living, the hallmark of a spiritual existence, is a sense of God and I are one, that we are unified, we are connected, that we belong to each other, that we live on a universal web of connection that is not separate from one another. So I love the idea of a web, because the web implies, the nature of a web is that, the spider's over here and something lands on the web over here, and the vibration of that something landing on the web causes the spider to go check it out. Now, unfortunately, he's going to eat whatever's there. But this web of connection, for the way I'm using it, simply means that there isn't any way that one thing can happen where I am and have it not reverberate somewhere around the world, because there is a giant web around the earth. And whatever I do is felt. Whatever you do is felt. So whether we like it or not, we are difference makers from the get-go. Whether we like it or not, we matter not only to our own personal existence and our sphere of influence, our family, friends, co-workers, but we matter to the consciousness of the world. That when somebody walks into a school and kills kids, or kills themselves, or poaches an elephant, we are involved. That we are not necessarily separate from the process. So I thought it would be a good practice today to explore for ourselves the distinction between either or both and to see where we can see in ourselves if we can loosen up a little bit. Now, either or consciousness has a feeling tone of rigidity about it in most cases. So because it means either, it's not both, it's either. I either like chocolate or vanilla ice cream. I don't like both. I either believe that God is real or I don't. I believe that the same-sex marriage is right, or I believe it's wrong. It's very black and white, either or. So there's not too much oneness or inclusivity included in the consciousness of either or, either this or this. And there are some tones. Now, by the way, the ego lands firmly in either or consciousness. So either or consciousness is born of the ego. And you and I, if you're on a spiritual path with me, you know that we're working to not to eliminate the ego, because the ego is a part of what it means to be incarnated in these bodies and to learn how to navigate this life. But the ego is really a duality, a symbol of duality. It's me or you, not me and you. It's survival at any cost. It's dedicated to being right. The ego wants to be right. The ego will leave you lonely just to prove it's right. So this idea of it's this way or this way has a rigidity about it, duality about it. And you can look, it's very subtle sometimes, because we can do it. It's better to be a vegetarian than not. It's more righteous to be to trying to think of examples here. I'm sure you have many of them. That it's better to drink alcohol. It's better to go to church on Sunday than not go to church on Sunday. It's really better to make your bed before you leave the house in the morning. All of these are ideas that we've been indoctrinated to believe, that I would submit to you, leave us a little bit closed to possibility, a little bit closed to another's point of view, a little bit closed to learning and growing and evolving. And as spiritual beings, as human beings on a spiritual path of awakening, or I would say as spiritual beings on a human path of releasing, that the world itself and all of its conditions, and I kind of do mean all of them. Some people will argue with me. Some of you are going to argue with me about all of them. But I do believe that it's really pretty much interpretation from top to bottom, that there may be some ultimate reality in something, but you and I, as sleepwalking human beings, cannot know that reality. We cannot fathom the truth about anything as long as we are perceiving the world through our lens of perception. And every single person has their own lens of perception based upon their own orientation, their own upbringing, their own culture, their own human personality. It's like, and everybody who has that perception of the universe thinks that their perception is right. And do not, I would beg of you to not minimize what I'm saying, because it is those perceptions that cause war. It's those perceptions that cause bloodshed. It's those perceptions. I mean, do you know how many people have died in the name of God and religion? So these ideas that we're right are not right. They're just perceptions. They're just ideas that we know better, that we know best. Now, before we move into both and, it's important to go back a little bit to our fundamental belief in a power greater than ourselves. Now, I for one I was not personally raised up on in religion, so I didn't really have anything to undo too much when I got to be an adult. But like most people, even people who say they're atheists, I think what they really mean is they're atheists about the God that we've been indoctrinated to believe in. And I don't believe in that God either. So if that's a requirement to be an atheist or a believer, then I too am probably an atheist, because I don't believe that there is a patriarchal God in the clouds listening to 9 billion prayers, answering some, not others. I think it's 7 billion, but whatever. It's a lot of people praying for peace, praying for love, praying for abundance. And the world, obviously it's not a very effective system if it really is that way, because how many people's prayers get answered? You know, we live on a whole planet where suffering and hardship and hunger and war and poaching and murder all are still reigning supreme. So I'm not a person anyway. So, but I do believe with every fiber of my being that love is the ruler of this universe. And whatever God is, that it's something so ineffably beautiful. It is so sublime and so amazing. And you can catch glimpses of it in nature. You can catch glimpses of it in love. You can catch glimpses of it in music or art, or at the birth of a baby, seeing puppies. We catch the beauty that lives in juxtaposition to the news. So that capacity for love is in each and every one of us. That capacity for love is everywhere. And in fact, the thing I love about God the most is that it doesn't matter how dire it is, that love can win. Love, I mean, I have seen such miracles come out of such tragedy. So even though human beings love tragedy, we love making tragedy, we do love creating tragedy, we're not more powerful than God. So when we come back, in order to understand why you would move into a both and way of living, is because that's how who God is. God is a both and kind of entity. You know, I love Ernest Holmes used to call what we're talking about the thing itself. So it doesn't really matter what you call it, but there is a thing. There is something that created you, loves you, created rhinos and elephants, created plants, created the planet, and is nothing omnibenevolent. We talk about God as omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent, only good. So when God looks at us, this is a key point here, so listen. When God looks at us, God does not see a saint and a sinner. God does not see someone worthy of saving and somebody worthy of condemning. God has no judgment about us. God sees only perfection. If God, I'm pretty sure that if God does anything, she laughs. She just laughs. She looks at us, she goes, you have everything. You have the power within you to create heaven on earth. You can, with the power of your mind and the power of your heart, you could create paradise. And instead, you're doing this. And why she's not worried is because we're eternal beings. This isn't the end of the game. Your suffering is not the end of your game. It's temporary. Everything in the outer world is crude and temporary representation of consciousness. But my point being, if God doesn't judge you for the way that you are or for the mistakes that you've made, who in the hell gives us the right to do that? Like, why can we do that? And the answer is we can't really. To live a life of spiritual power, we have to give up judgment. We have to give up being right. We have to give up thinking that our way is the way or the only way or the right way. We have to give up thinking that whatever it is that we think justifies our being mean or violent or angry or hateful or hurtful. So I've often said through my years in ministry that the last holdout is judgment. The last holdout is judgment. And we've been tested so much. All of us have been tested so much with judgment in politics, in economics, in the pandemic, because we know what's right and what's wrong, right? Don't we? But again, the universe is neutral. The universe isn't, nothing that happens is ultimately good or bad, because whatever you call good, somebody else is calling bad. Whatever you call bad, somebody else is calling good. And who is right? Well, let me just say it doesn't really matter, because being right will cost you your peace. It will cost you your happiness. It will cost us, ultimately, it could cost us the planet. That being right is not the same as being peaceful or being happy. So now, both and has a totally different feeling tone, because it leaves room for everything. It leaves room, like if you're running a meeting at your company and you don't have room for two opinions in the room, you're going to have very limited effectiveness and success, because we don't really know what's right and what's wrong unless we can hear both sides, like hear them both and. Can we live in a win-win world where everyone gets what they want, which ultimately, by the way, if we set aside all of the nonsense, what we all want is to be loved and cared about and cared for and abundant and have our needs met. Every human being wants that. So you have to see if there's something inside of you that has the room for both opinions, has the room to include other people's perspectives. Now, by the way, this does not mean that you agree with people or you don't draw lines in the sand when you need to. It's more of a way of living in which what's going on in your consciousness and in your mind, in your thoughts and in your words is not duality, is not exclusivity. I remember one time somebody saying to me, and I've learned this, where they'll say, before you state your opinion into a room full of people, just know that whenever you do that, you're going to alienate somebody. Why? Because they're not going to share your opinion. So when we walk into a room and voice our righteousness, well, this is how I feel, and this is obviously right. Haven't you watched the news? Didn't you read the internet? That there's somebody in the room who feels differently than you do, and they will either then begin to push on you or pull on you. And hence war will happen, or alienation will happen, hearts will be broken, friendships will be severed. So your opinion, I think from a spiritual perspective, it would be really great to walk through life with no verbalized opinions, without very careful assessment of the impact of your opinion, the reason it needs to be made, and whether or not the reason it needs to be made is for the purpose of love. Yeah. So, Joel Osteen, I love this Joel Osteen quote. He says, "Every day we have plenty of opportunities to get angry, stressed, or offended. But what you're doing when you indulge these negative emotions is giving something outside yourself power over your happiness. You can choose to not let little things upset you." So how this ends up being a personal practice. And by the way, I'm never really talking to you from the standpoint that the way you are changed of the world can be saved. I'm always talking to you from the standpoint that your being changed will be for you an inroad into deeper peace, deeper purpose, deeper meaning, deeper satisfaction, that will remove from you any anger, hostility, resentment, guilt, rage. Will heal for you any alienation within yourself and or yourself and others. That's really the first and foremost purpose. Now, what's true is that um, when that happens for you, spiritual people who have had a spiritual awakening, meaning they have come out of the hypnotism of being human, to question what they believe and why, to reassess their positions in life based on conditioning. When people do that and begin to watch or observe their own behavior, they normally, in fact, they never, a spiritual, like the Dalai Lama, Joel Osteen, the Buddha, all our spiritual teachers do not commit mass murder. They just don't. Spiritual people walking a spiritual path, consciously evolving, do not kill or harm other people if it can be avoided. Do not kill animals. Do not disrespect anything, really, that we kind of move through life being fulfilled and peaceful and making a difference where we can. So both and is the goal is the idea for today's lesson. Both and. So what you can do, your practice this week is just to look and see where you're living in either or, where something has to be one way or the other way, that you can't make room or entertain for both. One of my favorite quotes is F. Scott Fitzgerald, who says that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. I think when this quote first came into my awareness and I found it meaningful was when my mom died, and that was in 1999. And I remember, is that right? It is right, 1999. Wow, a long time ago. At any rate, I remember when she passed that I had two things going on inside of me at the same time. One was grief. I mean, grief so deep that I wasn't really sure I could go on living without her. And also a kind of spiritual understanding of the circle of life that was tinged with joy. And I remember being a little amazed at how I could be feeling joy and grief at the same time and still functioning. And I think I think for me, this quote is talking about that. It's like, can you hold that you're a Democrat, but that there is an opposing idea? Can you hold that and still function? Not just function, but function in a level of unconditional love and peace and acceptance, or the other way around? Can you, even though you may have a preference that something is one way, can you hold that there's another idea about that is different than yours and still function without degrading into judgment or rage or unacceptance or hatred or violence? Can we be holding two opposing ideas at the same time? And you do not, I repeat, you do not have to sacrifice your individuality or your opinions in any way. But opinions are different than judgments. Preferences are different than condemnations. So for you and I, on a spiritual path, it is very important that we live in such a way that it demonstrates where we came from. And where you came from is love. You know, I love the story of the prodigal son because it really speaks to that it doesn't really matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter that the moment we awaken to the truth of our being, we are welcomed back. That there's no judgmental entity. There's no God out there condemning us for our mistakes. None. There's no God out there condemning us for our choices. There's no God out there who's for or against abortion, for or against gun control, for or against conservation, there's no God out there like that. All of this is human folly, human participation in our belief in our humanity and our five physical senses. But I'm going to tell you that your five physical senses and the world that's been created is kind of a crude and temporary representation of current consciousness. And when consciousness changes, the outer circumstances will change. When you change your relationship to money, money in your life will change. When you change your relationship to health, the health in your body will improve. So when we change our relationship to other people and to tolerance and acceptance, what that looks like in the world will become very different than the way it looks in the world today. And I'm really all for that right now. I am. I'm doing my own work. I'm working so hard at really, as Ernest Holmes would say, turning away from the appearance of violence and leaning back into the truth of peace. And just to know that leaning into the truth of peace is equally as powerful as the gun, as is prayer, of course. So that's our lesson for today, to practice the principle of oneness, to notice in yourself when you are not practicing the presence of oneness, when you are living in an either or state of being. Just notice and then see if you can shift, see if you can soften around your perspective and your point of view. I mean, listen, sometimes a practice is easy. I remember doing my yoga teacher training, and all the students would go into the room and put their mats where they always put it. And the teacher one day would say, to move your mat someplace else. Don't get caught in the rut. Move your mat. So it's kind of like that. So how you can figure out what you're thinking and where your rut is, just listen to yourself talking to other people or to yourself in the shower or the car. The things you complain about are where you need to change. The things you judge are where you need to change. The things that you think that cause you unhappiness or suffering, you need to change. And it's really not really much harder than that, though it sounds like it should be harder, but it's not really harder. So that is our spiritual lesson for today. I'm so happy you joined me. couple of things. I will be back here next Sunday. I actually don't know once again what my topic will be, but you'll know. You'll know as soon as I know. If you are not getting my blog, you can go to www.deniseschubert.com and you can sign up for the newsletter, and you can also read past blogs and look at my travels through Africa. If you wish to support my ministry through love offerings or tithes, you can do that also through my website at deniseschubert.com/donations, or PayPal or Zelle through revdschubert@gmail.com. And those are always welcome, since this is my new life. And that's it. So I'm complete for the day. I'm going to pray us out. I love to end our time together in prayer, a blessing, and a benediction. So have fun with this. Spiritual living should be fun and light. Now, there are maybe moments of angst. We'll talk about those, I'm sure, at some time. But the thing to remember always is personal transformation comes before global change. You change, the world changes. People change, the world changes. People become different, or all of our systems become different. So do not for 1 minute ask the question, what can one little tiny person do? It's all up to you. You and I, it's all up to us. We change, people around us change. I'm sure if it's not you, you have a parent or a grandparent or someone in your life who believes so strongly in something that that's all they talk about. They complain about it. They disrespect other people about it. They've broken up friendships over it. They've left church because of it. We want to eliminate that. We do not have to react that way. We can respond in a different way. You and I have the choice of what we want to do and how we want to do it. We do. And that is a life of spiritual power. A life of spiritual power is authenticity and choice. All right, so let's turn within for a moment, just for a closing moment of gratitude and thanksgiving. Gratitude just to be able to engage in conversations that matter. Gratitude to lean into the truth of love, to lean into the truth of unconditional love, to lean into the truth of non-judgment, of acceptance, to lean into the truth of joy without reason, that joy and peace and love are internal qualities independent of outer circumstances. And so through the word that I'm speaking for and about each person within the sound of my voice, we amplify these internal qualities through our awareness of them. We amplify joy, we amplify peace, we amplify love. We literally turn our attention away from the darkness to the light. We turn on the lights. And as we do this, things in our world shift. Things in my world shift. Things in your world shift. And things in the world will shift. And so we will leave in our wake a higher vibration and a different consciousness than the one that we encountered. That's our charge. That's my charge to us, all of us. And so I'm grateful for the time we spent here together tonight, knowing that it's made a difference, and looking forward to the next time we do it again. So peace and blessings. Namaste. Look forward to next time we meet. Have a great week.